Welcome to Simply Sarah. I'm Sarah Stockham, and I am so glad that you are here. This conversation is one that you are going to be remembering and thinking about, not just as we are talking through and as you are viewing and listening in, but also it's going to give you some nuggets to be thinking about later on. I had the incredible opportunity to meet Laura Schroerlucke quite a few years ago. She was in high school. My daughter was in high school. I will let her share more of that story. I'm going to bring her in right here. Laura, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's just so great to see you. I would love for you to introduce yourself because I'm not that great at introducing people. And I think that you and I share exactly what it is that people need to know about you.
Yeah, this one's a hard one for me too. It's like I'm so many things, but also just who I am is in this form and where my soul comes from. Um, there's a lot there behind that. But I do know you because I played water polo with your daughter
Yes.
in high school. And so that was the first kind of link of connection that we both shared. And since then, that could have been good 10 years ago. I'm 26 now.
Yes.
So it's wild how time flies. But yeah, since then, I've just been on a journey which feels a lot like remembering what it means to be human on earth and getting to know who I am. I think that's been the most fulfilling thing I have found for myself, is truly learning to know myself deeper and realizing that as I learned to know myself and I can kind of separate who I am, like who my soul is and who this iteration I am embodying, this iteration, this incarnation of Laura. And I get to kind of play around with all these versions of myself and these layers of myself and getting to the core. I'm like, who is living from that very core? And it's this essence of light. And so I'm kind of been on this like journey of like peeling away the layers of trying to get to know who I am. All of the layers can be like conditioning too. It can be how I was raised or just, the culture that I grew up in, and peeling those layers away and realizing that at the very center of who I am, that is the truth of my identity. And it's a pure essence of light, and it's a connection to my soul and the many lifetimes my soul has lived. So
Wow.
knowing thyself has been a very fruitful, fulfilling journey for me. And so I guess how I would say is who I am is I am someone who is determined to be an advocate for my soul and connect to my higher self and God's will for my life.
Yes. Oh, Laura, that is just shared so beautifully. Did you have people in your life growing up who exemplified this for you? People who were seeking and searching and finding their authentic essence of light that were able to kind of spark that in you?
That's a great question. I think it was actually the lack of. I think there was a lack of people embodying their truth around me. And so I almost felt this like chasm. I've always, since a little girl, just felt so connected to like the whisperings of my soul. I remember some of my first memories at 2 or 3, just in my backyard in the grass and hearing this voice, this matured woman's voice speaking over me and with me and holding me. And so I always felt this kind of like strong connection to God, my higher self, whatever we choose to use wording on that. But it was, I think, just this deep connection early on that linked me, and I never quite lost that. I mean, there's periods where I feel like I kind of fell asleep, and kind of you wake back up, you remember, you really, yeah, sorry.
No, I was completely agreeing with you. And I really love how you talk about coming from a place of not having that. And so you began seeking. What are some of the things that, as you began to seek, that you found to be really helpful, maybe for you, keystones along the way or tools along the way that were helpful for you to know that you were going in the right direction?
Mm. Yeah, yeah, let me think some touchstones here. I think just through prayer for my own life. I think through um, a lot of journaling. I've journaled since I was 15 or 16. I have a whole stack of
I
journals.
love that.
What I've started to realize through the work of scribing is that there are patterns, there are cyclical patterns that are in my life. So I'll notice like, okay, right around November, September, this is kind of where that loneliness begins to resurface and come back. And kind of this concept of looking at growth as not this linear thing where we learn something and then we grow from it and we move on and then we're never going to touch it again. It's never going to come
Right.
back. Like we're done, we're perfect. We have ascended to the next chapter, you know.
Right.
It's not like that. What I've found is growth is this spiral. It's a circular form. So these events will continue. These events that kind of trigger us, right? And they usually
Yes.
have a big lesson. Like all of our challenges are where the treasures of our lessons are hiding, or the treasures of who we're meant to be can be found kind
Yeah.
of in these really crunchy, uncomfortable moments. So kind of seeing the world that way and realizing each thing that comes back around is just an opportunity for me to learn from it and not let it like cut me as deeply, you know,
Mhm.
and like see the world through this. I guess I just have this ability to look at the world through a storybook like way,
Mm.
being character, like I am the main person in my story. I'm the main role, but I'm also the director. You know, I'm on
Yes.
costumes. I am orchestrating the entire thing. And then I look at the world around me like everybody's a messenger. Like if there's certain
Mm.
archetypes of people who keep coming up, I'm like, this kind of person keeps coming up. I'm gonna pay attention and just get curious because there's something I'm meant to learn here. So it's kind of like an abstract way of answering that question, but it I'm a very abstract person. Yeah.
Oh, but I love that. Tell me about being curious. What were some of the things that allowed you that freedom to be curious and to delve into those areas?
Mm. Well, yeah, I think it's that childlike sense of wonder. I think if we can always learn to hold on to that and always be curious, we are like the active participant in our life. And I think for me, there's an overlap with I love symbolism, and I look at the world around me symbolically. So if I'm having a certain thought and I'm wondering which direction to go in, and I see a hawk soar over me, I'm feeling like I'm gonna feel a sense of security and a sense of knowing of like, okay, I will track what my thoughts were when
Mhm.
that happens. So I'm just looking at the world around me as there's so many different ways that God is speaking to me, and
Yes.
so I just begin to kind of play like I'm part of this puzzle and see how much can I be aware of, how much can I
Mhm.
feel in my body when things are happening outside of me. How does that somatically feel? And I think that all has just fueled my curiosity because it's like a never ending game that you get to
Yeah.
play every single day.
Oh, it's so true. Laura, I really appreciate how you talked about things being cyclical. I've noticed for me that I'm very sun attached. I don't have a better way to say it right now. But when the sun is shining, and so and I've lived south of the equator, so this isn't about necessarily the months, it's
Mhm.
about the seasons, right? When
Mm.
there are longer days, those are the days that I find that I don't really think too much about feeling low or blue or depressed. But when the days begin to get shorter and noticeably shorter, I find myself moving into those places of just being aware and aware that I need to be taking care of myself differently during those periods of time than when the sun is super shiny. And, I've tried, tanning beds and that kind of thing. And I can't trick my body into it. Right.
Yeah.
Um, so I took that off the list because, that didn't seem to work for me. But definitely that being aware and finding those patterns. And I've heard somebody speak more recently about looking at their week Sunday to Saturday and seeing if they happen to have lulls in their energy through the week. And I haven't done that yet, but that piqued my interest. I thought, oh, I wonder if there is a day of the week that I feel more excited or feel like I have more energy
Mm.
than other days of the week. Have you found that as well as you kind of process through? You talked about seasons, or September, November, but are there also periods of time that you find that you don't find yourself thinking about those things at all?
Yeah, I think it's, I'm in San Diego right now, and it's kind of like there's this energy of like eternal sunshine, and there's like a mentality where it almost begins to feel like Groundhog Day. And I actually begin to crave more seasons. I want the
Yes.
contrast and the
Yes.
bitterness of the cold that teaches me how to be
Yes.
more resilient within and push that
Mm.
warmth out. And this was the first year I actually really enjoyed it getting dark earlier. And
Wow.
I think there wasn't I leaned into that resistance, and I kind of
Mhm.
surrendered, and I realized I just listened to my body, and what my body wanted to do was it didn't want to go out. It didn't want to hang out with community. It didn't want to go to the parties. And when instead of trying to fight that and realized it wanted to hermit and bear down, and it wanted to journal, and I want to paint, and I
Yes.
want to just like reflect, because that
Mhm.
darkness allows us to go within. And so
It
if
does.
we're uncomfortable with going within and looking at ourselves, we might not enjoy that darkness. But if
Right.
we lean into that and see what medicine's there, I've found that I lean into the cycles, and there's so much potency there. By the time that spring is happening, I'm just blossoming because I prepared to shed all my old layers. I
Yes.
compost and I fertilized my ground, and from there I can
Yes.
like buoyantly come out of the ground with a sense of renewal by
Mm.
spring. So the seasons is something I want to experience more more of. Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
You spoke about watching the seasons, but you also spoke about seeing a hawk fly overhead and just being aware that to be thinking about your thoughts, to be aware of your thoughts, to kind of go back a little bit with that one. Are there other animals that you have found that bring messages for you? And while you're thinking about that, for me, a hummingbird has been one that
Mm.
is always, not always, I should say. There was a particular time where I was in an intersection. It was a four-way stop on Glendora Avenue. And as I stopped at that point, there was a hummingbird that came and it just went up and down several different times, like it was looking right at me in the
Yeah.
center. And I thought, okay, I'm getting the message that I'm not alone, that
Mm.
that their spirit is with me no
Mm.
matter where I happen to be. And so I just share that for myself in terms of one of those pieces. Do you have things like that as well? Other animals maybe that bring other messages for you?
Definitely. Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's beautiful. I love hummingbird medicine, just always
Yes.
reminding me to take life lightly and enjoy life and find joy. Um,
Yes.
For me, I've had two very potent animals come up. One
Mm.
is a bear, a grizzly bear, and I had a series of dreams with this grizzly bear. I'm
Oh,
a big dreamer, but basically the dream kind of, and at the time of my life, to give context, I was living with my boyfriend a couple years ago at the time, and I was just feeling really alone. I was feeling conflicted and feeling like I needed to get out, but I didn't really have the courage to leave.
mm,
And these dreams kind of came to me of this grizzly bear. And the first couple dreams, we developed a relationship over like 6 months. The first time I'd see the grizzly bear, I would be hiding, I would be scared of the grizzly bear. Then eventually time goes on, and the grizzly bear is like, I am here to help you, I am a guide
mm,
to assist you, do not be afraid of me, I'm with you. And so we like end up cuddling, and then throughout time I'm like riding the grizzly bear through a forest. And
mm.
then my dad gets cancer, and the grizzly bear takes me on his back, and we go into this cave, and my dad is standing above these beautiful like turquoise pools.
Mm.
I'm watching all these different animals go into the water, like scraggly, mangly, like, scrawny little animals, and they come out of the water and merged, refreshed, and renewed. and the grizzly bear goes in, and then my dad's there, and he's saying that go in with your dad. And so me and my dad go into this pool, and we
Mm,
come out, and he's refreshed, and I'm refreshed. And that was like the peak experience that I had with this grizzly bear that just kind of taught me
mm,
this strength from having the courage to leave my boyfriend, because I ended up doing that, to knowing that everything was going to be okay with my dad and his diagnosis. And so, yeah, the grizzly bear, it definitely comes up. I
mm,
love painting him in many different things. I'm always finding myself painting him. So
mm.
animals are very potent in my life, and I really respect all animals as like sentient beings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I so appreciate you sharing about the grizzly bear and about dreams. I would love to hear more, Laura, about how you are able to wake up and recall the
Mm,
dreams that you've had, because I believe that such incredible healing and also messages come through in our dreams, and that they can be things that foreshadow, they can be dreams that look back in our life, they can be dreams to just give us context for what other people are going through. And so
mm.
there's so many different ways to be able to look at the dreams, but we need to be able to remember them first. So how do you do that, friend?
Oh, yeah. I think definitely the dream journal is a huge help. So having that dream journal, so if you wake up in the middle of the night, even if you can't really even barely see, it's nice if you have a little light. If you can't see it, just kind of start writing it down.
Mhm.
Um, I like to talk it out in the morning, so I'll be like waking up out of my bed, and I'll start like, what do I remember? Kind of as you begin to wake too, you kind of
Yes,
develop consciousness while you're still at the very tail end of your dream. So I
right.
start to gather as many symbols as I can, and
Mhm.
pictures that I can, and so I have like a little category, and then I begin to talk it through with myself in
Mhm.
my head or out loud in the morning. But especially if I wake up in the middle of the night, if I don't feel like grabbing that pen, if you really want to get good at journaling, it's important. You got to like start writing it. But
Yeah.
for me now, I have that kind of established relationship. And so I can just remember key aspects of the dream, like different symbols, different scenes. And then from there, yeah, get all of that medicine.
Yes.
What is happening to my skin?
Yes.
I'm not knowing where that came from.
That was beautiful.
That was cool, right? I was like, did you see
Yes,
that on your screen? I have no idea where that
I
came from.
did. That was cool.
It was cool. But yeah, I mean, yes, God or your higher self, your subconscious, it doesn't matter, is trying to communicate with you. And there's so much wisdom there. It can
Mhm.
be so isolating. We have so many experiences that really we feel like we only know. Um,
Right.
so it's nice to connect with the subconscious, who is picking up so much more every single day than we actually are. I mean, it'd be so overwhelming if we actually like picked up on everything, or if we were conscious of all the thoughts that we had.
Yes.
It's terrifying.
I really appreciate how you talk about having a dream journal. I know that there are people who write songs that always keep a pad of paper next to the bed, and that they put the intention as they're going to sleep about the lyrics or the tune or whatever. And as they wake up, begin to wake up in the morning, so often that they will have that inspiration, exactly what they need for that
Mm,
next step. And I find that to be so incredibly powerful. And so thank you for talking about the dream journal, because I think that's a key piece for remembering the dreams, but also being able to then, if you have the time, to write out. And what you are doing is so powerful. These are powerful tools of taking the symbols that are specifically for you, Laura. Other people may have different meanings that go along with the same symbols. And I just encourage the viewers and listeners to, if you are certain that something specific in the dream means something specific to you, keep that. You can listen to other people talk about what it means for them, but for you to really hold on to, because spirit works so hard, I believe, or is so diligent in trying to create very, very specific communication with each of us. And especially with people who feel like they don't necessarily fit into whatever the mold is that they happen to be living, right? And so whether it happens to be your family of origin or where you're going to school or the philosophy of the people that you work with, Spirit is speaking in a very specific, tangible language just for you, and to be listening for that, and to be willing to hear the messages, to be willing to be open to that. I think that's another key piece. If you could give a piece of advice to somebody who is just beginning this process, Laura, of finding this illumination inside of themselves, of
Mm,
beginning to feel comfortable in being curious. And
mm,
maybe that just that first step for them of being open to the possibility that being curious would be a good thing. Inside of that, what advice would you give them?
mm. Yeah, I would say for this person to have the courage and be brave to witness your life and witness the possibility that beliefs that you have maybe created for your life were there to protect you at one point and
Mm,
might not serve you anymore. And so have the courage to witness these structures that you have built and know the reason why and honor that reason, but also give space if that structure is it's time for it to fall
mhm,
and a new version of you is pulsing and waiting to come out. Just be brave and allow things to unfold. Allow things. Sometimes things have to fall. Sometimes structures have to break. Sometimes a storm has to come. But that brings us closer to who we
mm,
are. And so just being brave.
mm. I love that. Be brave. Yes. And you spoke earlier about the space of um, having the courage to journal, to look at the journals, that you have so many journals. I love that you've kept them all. Um, what do you find yourself going back to the journals then and rereading, or do you find yourself looking at the pictures that you've drawn along the way? What is it about those journals that allows you this space to say these are important in my life?
Yeah. I every new year I go ahead and reread my journal and then I choose one journal. It's a process of like about a month, and
Yeah.
I'll choose another journal and I'll kind of flip through the pages. But I've found that times that I began to feel lost. I'm like, who am I? Like, what am I doing? Kind of a existential crisis. I'll pick up my journal and I'll read and I will just be in a witness of the beauty of who I am. And at the very least, there's this devotion to self. And that is so
Mm,
beautiful to witness, like how much I am working hard to just be the best version of myself. And I mean
yes.
that pulls me into, putting too
Yes.
much pressure on myself, but there's a beauty that is always there to remind me of
Mhm.
who I am and where I've come from or who I'm not anymore.
Yes. Oh, that's a powerful one. Oh, that's so powerful. I've been working with a mentor who teaches pressure free living. And
Mm,
she talks about how somebody who has been one of her clients, rather timid by nature, after having worked with her for a period of time, and became, went home. And as she came home for the holidays, she just announced to everybody, I am a different person. And
mm,
that way that you have seen me be so fearful in the past is no longer who I am now. And that just so parallels what you're saying, Laura, about being willing to look at who we have been in the past and be willing to say, thank you very much for that iteration,
yeah.
but that no longer in this present time serves me. Maybe
Mm,
in the future, maybe some portion of that may come back. I don't know. But in this particular space and time, to say, this is who I am, and I no longer need to feel bad about that. And
mm,
even if all of my friends are still doing that or involved in or think that that's how they need to see me, to be gentle not only with myself, but also with them, to explain or to share as it's appropriate. That I used to be that way, and I
Mm.
used to feel that way, or I used to talk that way. But this is a new iteration. This is a new experience of remembering who I am.
Mm. So powerful too. I like how she presented herself because there's so much fear when we change that the people know us from our past and that they're going to like pull us back into our
Right.
past self, and we're really trying to like get away from that, right? And so I
Yes.
think that's so cool that she just like stood in her power and was embodied in her truth and her sense of newness and
Mhm.
claimed that for herself and let everybody witness that. I think that is so major. It's awesome.
And I also think that using our words, I love how you spoke about as you begin to wake up in the morning, while you're still in that state of mind where you're not fully into the human realm yet, that you begin to kind of talk through. I think that words are so, so, so important. So I know that introverts do the talking silently, they're processing the information. And that people who are much more on the extrovert side need to hear the words, need to talk it out in order to be able to process the information that they are going through. And so I love that she took that time to do that and to know that, and I'm sure for myself, I would have been thinking ahead of how will they receive this.
Mm.
And then the conversation would be, it's not about how they receive it. It's about how I feel about the journey that I've been on and honoring this growth that I've made.
Yeah, that kind of almost touches on something I've been going through too, where I feel like a lot of this is about a lot of the work that I'm doing, instead of trying to get validation from others to approve me and say like, wow, you're doing great, or what the real gift is just coming into my body and embodying it. And if I feel like I'm changing and I feel like some kind of like metamorphosis has happened,
Mm.
instead of trying to explain that to people and like what happened and where I came from, I'm actually just kind of putting on this like suit of my embodiment of the version of me that is capable and strong and like went through an entire, death and rebirth process, and
Yes.
letting people just feel the reverberation of that
Yeah.
without having to explain myself. And I've realized giving myself the permission to just be embodied and not have to explain myself to anybody,
Mm.
but just let my actions and my energy speak louder than sometimes the
Yes.
story. Because there's importance. Sometimes we need to share a story of where we came from, and that brings us empowerment. But sometimes it's just like, to hell with the story. I'm ready to just like be in it.
Right, right. So, so true. I think that you've touched on something that is so key as you talk about the death and the rebirth. Can you share a little bit more about that, Laura?
Mm, this is my favorite topic, I would have to say. Yeah, there's a saying that I love to say, and it's just die before you die. Um, and having the courage to surrender old parts of yourself that no longer serve you. It's like we easily get rid of the clothes in our closet and we're like, oh, that's not me anymore. I've been actually trying to get rid of low self-esteem items that make me just not feel good about myself. And so there's also these kind of energetic pieces to us or experiences, even holding on to something too long, a story for too long. I feel like there's times in my life I've held on to stories of trauma and to hurt, and really my soul was so ready to let that go. But I'm here like, dragging it through the sand, like a briefcase of like all the things that ever went wrong in my life. And I'm like, no, this is why I am the way I am, because of this and this and this. And you need to understand this about me. And it began to just feel like, what am I doing? I'm keeping myself stuck in the past by focusing so much on the pain, so much on the hurt, rather than letting these things shape me. Let it like peel away all of the darkness and be born again to myself. And that's this beautiful journey. I mean, I think life would be kind of boring if we were exactly the same from start to finish. But what's really exciting is learning how to fall in love with ourselves in each new version of ourselves, and realizing that we can honor these parts of ourselves that we let go of, but realize that in that letting go, that only makes space for who you are meant to become next.
Oh, Laura, I'm loving this. This is just so deep, the wisdom that you are sharing, and that whole process of being willing to allow these, for me, it's like layers of cloaks, right? That have been there in my world for protection, or because I was taught that this is the way it was supposed to be, and allowing those cloaks to come off, and then noticing that I feel lighter, that there's
Mm,
a definite feeling that's different. And as you were going through your closets, I have been doing a very similar thing. I have a huge bag of clothes ready to go, to for other people to be able to use, right? And part of that, as I was touching things, was it the color, but the texture. I have become, as I have become more aware of my soma, of my body,
mm,
I am noticing that there are certain textures that it may be a great color on me and it may be a great cut on me. But if I'm not loving the texture of it, it
mhm.
doesn't get to stay, and that's okay.
Yeah,
And to stop feeling guilty about that. Even
yeah,
if I paid top dollar for it,
right.
it's okay. Energetically, it's holding me down or holding me back or holding something because I'm holding on to it, right? Rather than just releasing it and letting that energy flow, because there's somebody else who's going to be able to use and appreciate and enjoy. And I am just so grateful for that. So yes, I cheer you on as you go through your closet and clean things out.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Is if you could give a piece of advice, to somebody who has already been on this journey for a while, you'd given advice to people who hadn't been on the journey to be brave,
Mhm.
to start this process. But for somebody who has started this process, Laura, and they are feeling like this layer that's coming off is just, who are they going to be without it, right? You talked about dragging, and I remember sitting in a Reiki master class, and we had just done this incredible experience. And I remember journaling about, I know who I am in my brokenness, but who am I without that story,
Mhm.
without that brokenness? And so
Yeah.
for somebody who is in the process of saying, I'm doing this, but gosh, it just isn't feeling right. It's not feeling easy. It's
Mm.
feeling heavy. And I don't know that I have other people that I'm really ready to talk to about this. What advice would you give that person?
Mm. Okay. Yeah, for that person, it is also similar to be brave and have courage. Oh my gosh, it came to me, it left. Wait, come back, come back. I'm gonna tell you, I had this thought. Yes, there it is. So it's we sign up for everything. Our
Mm,
soul doesn't just value the happy experiences or the joy bringing experiences. Our soul
mm,
isn't just saying those are favorable over the heartbreak and the sorrow and the pain. Our soul makes no judgment on that. We've come here on earth to experience and to feel it
mm,
all. And sometimes grief is the price we pay for loving so deeply. But I will say, grief is a beautiful emotion that I've found just carves me empty and so deep. I'm just hollowed. And that's scary, right? We just feel empty. So what do we fill it with? We can fill it with like alcohol and drugs and fear. We could fill it with love because now we have a completely like emptied, hollowed out being. I mean, the tears that come with grief, it is just, there's so much space that is carved in us, and we get to choose how we fill ourselves up from that point. Grief's just an example, but that's like just one of those denser, harder emotions to kind of grapple with in this human experience, and inhibits us from like loving so intensely and so deeply because we're
mm.
scared of that loss, right? But
Yes.
at the end of the day, I would encourage this person to try to find the middle path and
Mm,
not try to judge themselves for being angry, or judge themselves for feeling shame. Like, they're just take away
right.
the judgment and the pressure that you have to be experiencing life in any certain way, and just hold no resistance to what comes up and allow yourself to feel it. But getting out of that mentality of this is right and this is wrong, this is a good emotion, this is a bad emotion. If I'm feeling these bad emotions, that means I'm not doing well in life. And that
Right.
just simply isn't true. Like the spiritual path is, it is, there's hardship there, but that we learn as we expand and we grow, is that that hardship is so important, and we value that and we love it. It doesn't mean we're going through it like with this,
Right.
happy Joe Lucky, like, wow, I love to go doing trauma work. Woo.
Yeah.
Like we're honest and we're authentic to the experience, but we have to experience this polarity, and our soul wants it
Yes.
so bad. So let yourself feel
Mhm.
it. Let yourself feel the pain and the sorrow instead of running from it, because it'll just keep chasing you.
Right. Right. I am so resonating with what you are saying. I think that one of the difficult turning points for me, one of the things that I was holding on was not forgiving.
Mm,
And in my early 20s, I had gotten married, and um, he had had an affair, and I was at a point of truly rebuilding from the very, very ground up who I was.
mm,
And it was a super important growth point for me, a super important lesson. I got into therapy. I've never shared this story on Simply Sarah, and but just today seems like the right time to share it. And so, in that place of going into therapy, I was challenged to choose to forgive.
mm,
And I just believed I had every right to be angry and to be hostile. And there came a point in that process where I began to understand that if there is somebody that I need to forgive, it doesn't change them at all. It does nothing for them.
mm.
I am the one that's carrying the weight. And so for me to choose to forgive, now, am I going to keep the wisdom that I've learned out of that? Absolutely. I
Right.
earned that wisdom, right? That's the gold, that's the diamond, that's the, you name it what you want to name it. That's the part we hold on to. But in terms of defining my life by saying this trauma has happened to me, I was the first person in my family to ever experience that. And so I felt like there was all this shame that came along with it. And my parents were incredibly supportive and loving. And that gave me space to live on my own, really find out who I am, lots and lots and lots of tears, and eventually met the person I'm married to and have been for over 3 decades.
Mm,
And so out of that, came defining some pieces that have been very impactful of how I am living my life today. Perfect? Not. But taking steps forward and keeping my toes in a direction that I know is a good direction. And yes, self correcting when I need to. And saying I'm sorry is certainly part of my journey, because I can absolutely come off too strong or think that I understand, interpret something that's not at all what the person was meaning. But that space for me of coming to a point of learning to say, I choose to forgive, not to say that that person's actions were honorable or righteous, but I'm choosing to forgive because I'm choosing the energy that I'm going to move forward with in my life. And I'm choosing to no longer carry and harbor that
mm,
because it doesn't serve me or any of my skills and talents, and it holds back my creativity. And so, in order to be freer in my life, I'm choosing to let go of that.
mm. Yeah. Wow.
I love the part you talked about of that persistence, right?
Mm,
That understanding that our soul is here to be able to experience all of it. And I think that we do put a gold star next to certain emotions and go, oh, yeah, those are yummy, those are good. And they can be yummy and good. But to choose to run after only those emotions, I think, allows us a distorted view of the full potential of who we can be. Because as you said earlier, those dark spaces do hollow us out and do provide space for other things. And we get to decide what it is that we want to allow to fill. And we get to be curious about that and decide if there are pieces that we want to pull in and try and maybe not. I always thought that going to the orchestra would be so much fun to listen and be and do. And I went several times during that period when I was single again, and they were fabulous, but it wasn't something that I was like, oh, I'm going to do that on my own all the time. They were good to do with other people at the right places and stuff. And so be curious and try things and see what works. So Miss
Totally.
Laura, you have so much that you do, that you touch, that you have learned, that you have experienced. I would love for you to share some of those tools with us. As people are interested in your podcast and what you are working on and doing, I'd love for you to share a bit more about those things.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So, wow. Yeah. My podcast is called What's Coming Up. And it's just about what's coming up in my life. Honestly, the conversations that I'm having with other friends, with community, with family, and I just begin to notice a pattern in these themes that emerge. And a lot of the lessons I'm learning, because I'm so devoted to myself and I have such a good attention for details and patterns,
Mhm.
that they begin to like kind of circulate in my head. And if I don't have a place to put it, it drives me a little bit crazy. And so honestly, the podcast started as something for me just to kind of take control of my thoughts that just run wild in my brain and create more space, for other things in my life. So I've found that with my podcast, I'm able to put a lot of the lessons that I've learned in there with the intention that, like, hey, this might inspire somebody else to take charge of their life, or help them get over a certain pattern or a repetitive, just something that keeps coming up over and over again, to overcome that, and just sharing my story. And so the podcast is a lot of fun. It's a lot with me. I do want to bring, on people further on, in this journey, but it'll be exciting. I am going to be going abroad, starting in April. I will be following my, yeah, I'm super excited. I'm going to be kind of going to Ireland, Scotland, and Norway, to explore my ancestral heritage in Ireland and Scotland.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of, ancestral connection work, a lot
Mhm.
of meditating, and, feeling just a pull over there. So that'll be fun to explore, and also just the way land can shape us and change us and activate us. Like, the
Yes.
planet has different veins and chakras and ley lines and energetic vortexes. And so I'm feeling really drawn to like these stone circles, and I'm
Mhm.
like, I have no idea what's going to happen to me out here, but I just know that my soul is just leading this mission. And so I'm giving
Mhm.
myself permission. We talked about living a pressure-free life. Like, what would that
Yes.
really look like? I wrote that in my journal. I'm like, what would it really look like to live a
Right.
life free of pressure? What would I do if I didn't live under these confines of what I think is a successful life, right?
Right.
So I decided, I was like, I'm just going to give myself the free pass, a hall pass for 2024, to
Beautiful.
just follow my heart and follow my bliss, and kind of just be a student in the school of life, and like just see where my interests take me. And so
Mhm.
I feel drawn to Norway. I feel drawn to Scotland, Ireland. I also did an astrocartography reading. I don't know if you've heard of
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Yeah, but people are curious about learning about certain areas on the planet that, will bring out a different aspect of your psyche. Each
Mhm.
planet, like where, each planet represents a different aspect of ourself. And so there's different spots on the map where a planet is like, has coordinates too. So for example, I have a Jupiter line in Norway, so that's a lot like of expansion and a lot of like, that just feeling that sense of wonder, and like paradigms just shifting and changing, and structure is going to be coming down and bursting new. So,
Yes.
um, I think for my podcast, I'll definitely, be continuing that, and I'll have a lot to say on that journey. So if people want to follow me on that, I think it'll be really fun to, yeah, to share what's going on.
Wow. Will this be your first trip overseas?
No, I did study abroad in Thailand by myself when I was 20. And
Yes.
that's kind of what started this. I met this version of myself and I was like, who is she? Like, who is this version? But looking back at it, it was my true self. It was
Yes.
just my true self. And I met the version of who I am, who my soul wants me to be.
Yes.
And I just fell in love with all
Mhm.
these layers of who I am.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. Um, I love that you have been out of the country, that you've had the opportunity to travel. I know that your mom has done a ton of traveling. I'm not sure if your dad has done a lot of traveling out of the
He
country or
has.
not.
He did in his earlier years, like in his 30s and 40s. So he kind of got it out of the
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
Yeah. But I love that you are listening internally to what's coming up for you to decide where you want to go and what you want to do, and that process of that. So are you thinking about like just basically taking a suitcase or a backpack, or are you going pretty light, or are you going to take more things and possibly, stay a little bit longer?
I think it's gonna be, I could be up to like half a year. I mean, with the European Union, it can only be half a year.
Yes.
Um, but in the places I want to go. But I'm gonna be pretty light for the most part. Yeah, I don't think I'll need much. I've already been kind of like putting together, like marking clothes that I want to wear that I'm like, oh, this will do really well.
Yes.
And I've found some host families, different exchange programs
Mhm.
where families can host me. And
Yes.
I really just want to get immersed in the culture and, connect with the land, listen to
Mhm.
what the land teaches us. Because, oh my God, there's so much there when we can actually just quiet our mind and the chaos all around us. There is a
Yes.
storybook of wisdom that is pouring out of nature in every moment. I went camping
Mhm.
by myself on my birthday on January 16th,
Uh-huh.
and I felt my nervous system just slow
Yes.
down and saw all the teachings of the desert. Even this, as I was setting up my tent, there were these little birds hopping around, and I'm like, oh, hi, cute birds. But then I really begin to feel into their message, and I look up and I'm like, okay, there's a nest here. And I'm like, oh, I'm putting my tent right by their home, and they're kind of hopping around like, who is this person? She's in our home. And so I kind of took the moment to just like introduce myself. I was like, hello,
Yes.
hello, birds of this land. I come in
Yes.
peace, and I would love to share this space with you for the night.
Mm.
Provide by like taking care of tending this land and cleaning up the trash that's kind of scattered about, and realizing, like, I don't know, like humans, we are not at the center of the universe, but we really think like we're at the center of it. And all of other animals are just like cute and sweet. And like, I don't look at animals like, I think they're endearing and adorable, yes, but
Right.
like they're not just something that's cute to me. Like they're
Right.
sentient beings that are
Mhm.
not higher or lower above me. And so I really like that moment of like dropping into the whole ecosystem in the desert and just paying homage and reverence to all the spirit,
Mhm.
even the spirits that live there in that canyon. Uh,
Yes.
was really, yeah, it was really special and just taught me so much. Just watching the birds, watching,
Mm.
yeah,
I think what you just touched on is a really critical piece of when we come to a place that we haven't been before, to be able to say, my name is, and I'm not from this area. And so I come in peace. And if there are things that I need to be shown or taught, please teach me, please show me. So you're coming with that very open heart. And then also it also starts almost as an offering, right? Of saying, I'm not coming in demanding from this space. I'm
yeah.
coming in as somebody who is a fellow traveler on this earth, and allowing that to
Mm,
open up in a different way. I know that before we moved to the homestead, I've been coming here for decades. My grandparents um, relocated to this particular space um, in the late 60s, early 70s. And as they were doing that, um, I've been coming all of my life, right? Almost all of my life to this particular land. But as we began having serious conversations about moving, relocating to here, when I would come, I would begin to walk the edges of the land and just to have conversations with it and to say, if you would open your arms for us to come, if this is the right next step for us.
Mm,
And it's been just amazing how the land has talked to us. And
mm, mm,
I was out working today and increasing a border, a space around a sunset red maple tree that has I had in the summertime planted daffodils around there. My
mm,
aunt had died years ago, and these are daffodils that used to be, out of her garden. And so they've been on the property for decades, but they had gotten really clustered. They were too tight and not really blooming a whole lot. So this was the
mm,
first place that I began to dig and find and put these beautiful things in. And then we came later on and put chips around it, wood chips. And as they're beginning to come up, I'm noticing that the wood chips are over areas where the daffodils are, and they'll come up. I just thought that I'd kind of help a little bit by pulling it back just a little bit more. And just how easy it was this time to be working in that same area, how difficult it was when we first got here in the summertime. The ground was hard and
mm,
things, the weeds were just breaking off. And we've had so much beautiful rain that it just is allowing things just to pull up and out.
mm,
And just that beautiful awareness
mm.
that there are better seasons to be digging in than other seasons. It doesn't make sense, dig in the summer, but there are definitely some seasons that are better. As we are wrapping up, Laura, is there anything else that you want to reiterate or something else that you want to share before we say thank you to our audience?
I think, if people want to feel more connected to themselves and they want to feel more connected to the earth, I think get out there, get your feet barefoot onto the earth. Begin, it might feel silly, but allow it to feel silly. Allow yourself to laugh at yourself and be silly. But like children, you watch them play. They're talking to trees. They're interacting with their environment. They're talking to flowers, and begin to play like that. Pretend you're a child and wear
Yeah.
clothes where you feel like you can interact. Like take your hat off and your sunglasses and really like show some bare skin so that the elements can begin to really interact with you. So get out there and play and just kind of see that luminous child that's within all of us. Allow space for that to awaken.
Oh, Laura, that is so, so profound. Thank you so much, friend. And while you were on your trip, if you decide that you want to come back and update us, we would love to hear. And we
Yeah,
will be listening for your podcast, what's coming
wonderful.
up. And just wish you just incredible experiences as you process this and decide to go forward with going overseas and spending time traveling and taking your shoes off and walking barefoot in new places.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sarah. It's been such a pleasure sharing my heart with you and feeling yours as well. Such a lovely
Thank you.
afternoon and a privilege to be on your show. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. As we wrap up this time together, I just encourage you to be looking at your life, to be deciding if putting in a dream journal would be something that would be helpful for you as you are processing messages that may be coming through at night. And I like to doodle in mine as well, not just writing only, but taking time to sketch different things out as well in that space. And until next time, have an absolutely phenomenal rest